The trail, once my solace, now mocked me with its silence. A ribbon of dirt and stone, it had promised escape, a sanctuary from the city's ceaseless hum. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple and fiery orange, the trail betrayed me, the markers vanishing into the encroaching shadows. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a stark contrast to the stillness of the ancient forest that surrounded me. I, Amelia Hayes, a woman who prided herself on her self-reliance, was hopelessly, utterly lost. Each step was a gamble, a blind plunge into the unknown. The trees, gnarled and ancient, seemed to lean in, their branches twisting into grotesque shapes in the fading light. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The forest, once a place of serene beauty, now felt like a predatory beast, its eyes watching my every move. Panic, cold and sharp, pricked at my skin, sending shivers down my spine. The rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the creaking of branches in the wind, each sound amplified in the stillness, a symphony of the wild that sent my imagination spiraling into dark corners. Then a flicker of light, a beacon in the encroaching darkness. A small clearing, and nestled within it, a cabin. Smoke curled lazily from its chimney, a promise of warmth and shelter. Relief washed over me, a tidal wave that threatened to buckle my knees. The cabin was old, its wooden walls weathered and worn, but it stood sturdy, a testament to the resilience of those who had built it. A figure moved in the clearing, chopping wood with rhythmic precision. Broad-shouldered, clad in a flannel shirt that stretched across his back, he exuded an air of quiet strength, a man who belonged to this wilderness. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the forest. Shul. Did I approach? Should I turn back, retreat into the darkness? But the ache in my legs, the gnawing hunger in my stomach, and the chill that seeped into my bones made the decision for me. Desperation outweighed fear. I stepped into the clearing, my footsteps crunching on the fallen leaves. He turned, his gaze sharp and assessing. For a moment I regretted my decision, felt a flicker of fear. But then his expression softened, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. He gestured towards the cabin, an invitation. Inside, the cabin was a haven, a world away from the cold, unforgiving wilderness. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting a warm glow across the room, illuminating the simple wooden furniture and the shelves lined with books and jars. The scent of pine and wood smoke filled the air, a comforting aroma that soothed my frayed nerves. He moved with a quiet efficiency, offering me dry clothes and a thick woolen blanket. His voice when he spoke was deep and resonant, a voice that carried the weight of solitude, yet held a hint of kindness. He introduced himself as Ethan, a name as solid and unyielding as the man himself. He had an air of quiet authority, a sense of self-assuredness that came from living in harmony with nature. Yet, beneath the rugged exterior, I sensed a gentle soul, a man who understood the language of the wilderness. As I sat by the fire, wrapped in the warmth of the blanket, exhaustion washed over me. I hadn't realized how tense I had been until I felt the knots in my muscles begin to loosen. Ethan prepared a simple meal of stew and bread, the aroma filling the cabin, a promise of warmth and sustenance. Our conversation was sparse, our interactions punctuated by long stretches of comfortable silence. Yet, in those silences, I felt a connection, an unspoken understanding that transcended words. I found myself drawn to him, intrigued by the mystery that surrounded him. Who was this man, living alone in the wilderness? What had brought him here? The hours slipped by, the storm raging outside, a wild symphony of wind and rain. Inside the cabin, time seemed to stand still, the fire crackling, the silence punctuated by the occasional creak of the wooden walls. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in the presence of something extraordinary, a man who had found peace in solitude. When he finally sat across from me, his gaze met mine, steady and unwavering. I felt a blush creep up my neck, a sense of vulnerability I hadn't felt in years. The air crackled with an unspoken tension, a silent question hanging between us. He reached out, his hand brushing against mine, his touch warm and calloused. A jolt of electricity shot through me, a spark that ignited a fire within. I looked up, my gaze meeting his, and in that moment, I knew. The kiss was tentative at first, a gentle exploration, a testing of boundaries. Then, it deepened, a surge of passion that swept me away, a whirlwind of emotions that had been buried deep within me. His arms wrapped around me, pulling me closer, and I surrendered to the moment, lost in the warmth of his embrace. The storm outside raged on, a wild symphony of wind and rain, but inside the cabin, time stood still. Each touch, each kiss was a revelation, a discovery of a connection that felt both new and ancient. His hands, rough and calloused from a life lived close to the earth, moved across my skin with a tenderness that belied their strength. I felt seen, cherished, in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The air between us crackled with an unspoken energy, a silent conversation that transcended words. The rhythm between us was a dance, a delicate interplay of vulnerability and desire. There was no rush, no urgency, only a slow, deliberate exploration of the moment. Each breath mingled with the other, each heartbeat echoed the other, a silent affirmation of the connection we were forging. The fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering shadows across the room, illuminating the rugged contours of his face, the lines etched around his eyes that spoke of years spent in solitude. His lips met mine again, a deeper, more passionate kiss that sent a wave of heat through my body. It wasn't just desire, it was a longing, a deep-seated need to connect, to be seen, to be held. The storm within me mirrored the storm outside, a tempest of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I surrendered to the moment, lost in the warmth of his embrace, the strength of his arms around me. His touch was reverent, each movement imbued with an unspoken promise, a silent vow that for this night I was not alone. The intimacy unfolded like a carefully crafted symphony, each note perfectly placed, each movement a delicate brushstroke on the canvas of our shared experience. There was an exquisite slowness, a savoring of every sensation, every whispered breath. When sleep finally claimed us, it was with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. I drifted off, wrapped in the warmth of his arms, the gentle rhythm of his breathing a soothing lullaby. The storm outside had quieted, a soft rain pattering against the roof, a gentle reminder of the wildness that surrounded us. When I awoke, the first rays of sunlight were streaming through the window, casting a warm glow across the cabin. Ethan was beside me, his face softened in sleep, his breathing slow and even. For the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel alone. A sense of contentment settled over me, a quiet joy that filled the empty spaces within me. But I knew I couldn't stay. The trail awaited, as did the life I had left behind. I quietly gathered my things, the silence of the cabin amplifying the weight of my departure. As I stepped onto the trail, the cabin fading into the distance, a strange mixture of sadness and hope washed over me. I had come to the woods searching for solitude, but I had found connection, a fleeting moment of intimacy that had reminded me of what it felt like to be truly seen. The wilderness no longer felt so lonely, and neither did I. The trail stretched before me, a ribbon of earth and stone, leading me back to the world I had left behind. But I knew, deep in my heart, that I was no longer the same woman who had entered these woods. The memory of the cabin, the warmth of the fire, the touch of his hand, would stay with me, a reminder of the unexpected connection I had found in the heart of the wilderness. I walked on, my footsteps lighter, my spirit lifted, carrying with me the hope that even in the vastness of the world, connection was possible, that even in the deepest solitude, love could be found. I was Amelia Hayes, and I was no longer lost.